So, with that, I'm really looking forward to sharing some of the things that were done to bring those committees online and those various boards and those organizations. And hopefully I can share some information that may be helpful in the conversation we're going to have tonight. First of all, I will say that I think that you are well on your way to achieving and accomplishing what your goals and intentions are along these lines, because you've taken the first step, the major step. No one had to necessarily come to you with the recommendation that you do this. So that's really a very big step, because everything I feel starts with intentions. So with that being said, I know I didn't use my whole 10 minutes, but I'll leave it at that right now, and we can get into more discussion as we have the conversation going forward.
Great. Okay, that sounds great. And I didn't, Ruby, I'm so glad you're here. And I want you to, thank you so much. So Ruby, if you would want to give us some of your thoughts.
So I'll follow the lead, Dennis's lead, in terms of starting with introducing myself, I guess. My name is Rubis Story, and I am the founder and the CEO of Eco Latinos. And Eco Latinos is a nonprofit organization that started, we as a nonprofit organization, we just started in 2018. But before that, we started I started as a consultant about 7 years ago, and the story of how we started is that I used to work for government all my life in this country. Since I first got here, my first job was as a liaison in the mayor's office of Latino Affairs in DC. And then later I worked in my county, in Prince George's County, also as a liaison for the state's attorney of Prince George's County at that time, Glenn Ivey. And from there, I moved to work with Governor O'Malley as a director of the Governor's Commission on Hispanic Affairs. So my entire career in this country has been doing Latino outreach. Later on in the governor's office, I was also working, supporting in the diversifying boards and commissions, appointed by the governor. And after political transition, when O'Malley left office, those things happen where they don't, the new administration doesn't want you for who knows why, but they didn't want me. So at that time, I decided to start something to put to the service of the community my years of experience in Latino outreach, combined with my passion for conservation. And aware of the passion that Latinos have for conservation, I knew there was a need and an opportunity to connect the environmental movement of the Chesapeake Bay with the Hispanic communities of the Chesapeake Bay. There are multiple resources in the region, and those resources don't reach Latinos. And I work particularly with Spanish-speaking Latinos, first-generation Latinos mostly. And so there are many resources on the side of the environmental community, and there are Latinos that really, really care about the environment. And I can tell you a little bit more about that. Next time I get the chance to talk, I want to share some information about that with you, unless you want me to do it now, Kit. But so I can tell you a little bit more about Latinos and the environment and how now we're moving, with our programs.
We've got time for you to give us. I mean, I'd like you to delve a little all of it to delve a little bit about how you see groups like ours helping the efforts that you're talking about. So, but yes, proceed.
So, Kate, could you give me access to share a document?
Mike probably can. Mike, can you do sharing, facilitate sharing?
Yeah, let me hold on one moment, please. Okay, I'm going to make you the host. Yeah, so now you should be able to share.
Is she co-host?
I think.
Okay, let me
you-
see if I can share this. I'm not seeing my
The green button on the bottom of your screen.
no,
No?
yeah, I'm just not seeing my file. Oh, okay, let me just do something here. Bear with me, please.
The pleasure
And
is mine.
now let me try to show my screen.
There
Okay.
you go. All right.
So I wanted to tell you a little bit about our mission. Our mission is to empower the Latino community in the pursuit of social and environmental justice through engagement, education, activism across the Chesapeake Bay region. And I'm not gonna go into this because you wanna hear other things, but I wanted to share with you some key information here. So in terms of ethnic minorities and the environment, why is it important to engage with minorities? Is because there is a greater concern. Some evidence show that minority are more concerned or have a greater concern for in the environment and climate change. And in the case of Latinos, there has some studies from the climate change in the Latino Mind Yale program on climate change and communication that show that Spanish language, that Latinos are more concerned about the environment than non-Latinos, and it's been found that even white, the white community, which is a kind of a surprising fact for some. But then the interesting thing is that Spanish-speaking Latinos are even more concerned than the generation that has been here and are already, more, I say, engaged and more, immersed in the culture. And for some Latinos, the Earth Justice have found that some Latinos, environmental issues are more important than even, or as important, than the passage of immigration reform. There are another reason why it's important is because of the disproportionate burden of climate change on minority groups. And so we all know that our minorities are more exposed to air pollutants. I always have trouble pronouncing that word. I know what it means, but it's hard to pronounce it sometimes for me. The poor quality housing, with all heating systems and poor insulation in many minority communities. There is less tree canopy and therefore, heat pockets in some of my minority neighborhoods. There are higher vulnerability to health impacts from climate change. And we all know, more asthma, cancer. In the case of Latino children are 40% more likely to die from asthma than non-Latino whites. And the global migration, is the global warming, climate change is hitting countries, and this huge, massive migration coming from different parts of the world are not just because they want to come and take, they are not because they want to come and take people's jobs, but because the conditions there, many, are difficult and in many cases caused by the impact of climate change in farming and food production and all that. Another factor that is important is the connection between faith and the environment. For many minorities, and in the case of the Hispanic community, I can tell that taking action is a spiritual obligation. In the case of in many churches, there is this commitment, but particularly in the case of the Catholic Church, which is a predominantly church in Hispanic communities, the care for our creation, like that Laudato Si, which is the Pope's encyclical on the environment, is an inspiration and is something that motivate people to take action. But despite all that, there is a big gap, and it's been found that 7 in 10 Latinos have never been contacted by an organization working to reduce global warming. So there is this big concern and this opportunity, but it's just not, we're not connecting the dots. So how do we address that? And that actually, this is the part that will answer Keith's question about how we can do a better job, right? So it starts with working with, applying principles of cultural competency. And I sort of came up with this little graphic that, I don't know, that brings together all these ideas that I wanted to share with you. The first part of practicing cultural competence begins with understanding the limitations, our own limitations of our worldviews and experience, being able to reflect on behaviors that need improvement, being able to confront mistakes and being open to continuously learning and acknowledging differences between people and cultures. That's the first step to apply cultural competence. Then it comes with, then going to others, right? And in this case, in the Hispanic community, I say, go to, reach people where they are, where to, meet the people where they are. And that it begins with maybe on the part of the organization, identifying individuals that feel comfortable connecting with these communities and deploying leaders to establish relationships, to look at the landscape of the community, to see the conditions they live, to understand the culture, to identify leaders, go to where the community is. Many cases here is where the common mistake of putting an announcement on the website that is in Spanish or translating a flyer, is something that for some people it needs to be done to connect to their communities, their Latino friends or constituents. And chances are that's just not going to happen, and that you're gonna get the community to participate, because it takes a little bit more work than that. And that's where that's what we keep advocating people, that it just doesn't happen that way. People are busy earning their living. Every minute costs some money for them. Expecting people to come to a meeting to advocate for legislation, for example, that is a huge challenge, because that's where we need to look at the priorities of the people that we want to work with. And in their priorities, although we saw earlier they care, there is a higher priority to earn the living before they can participate. So in that regard, we need to look at offering activities in multiple forms that will address the needs of of an interest of the individuals, and that acknowledging that individuals come from a variety of backgrounds, have multiple learning styles, they have varied channels of communication and different interests. So it's all about looking at who you're reaching out. It's not so much about what I have to offer. What I want them to come get from me, but what I'm going to do to deliver what I want to have this community to be part of, and how I'm going to adapt my message and my approach to their priorities.
That's
Then
that's great. Sorry,
realigning.
sorry, Ruby. We're now at the a little past the 10-minute mark, and
Okay.
I'm wondering if I can have you, either complete this and on the next 5-minute segment, or how you'd like to handle it, because I'd like to have Raymond get in here for a few minutes too.
Okay.
What's your preference? You want to talk a couple minutes more here, or would you?
Yes, and then yeah, if I can complete this, and then I will like see, give the other and the
Okay.
other 5 minutes, give my time there, because I think this is an important message. So
That's
when
fine.
it comes to, and I like to complete the idea, even if
No, I'm fine.
So then the next step is realigning those goals to community needs. I mean, is so now we know the community better. Now we understand it better. Now maybe we have to come back and reshape the program so we can, so we can deliver a program that now that we know the community better, that know it's going to work. And all of that, is taking, and we went to this already, but, being adept to finding connections between community with different cultural backgrounds, make sure that the staff is able to draw information from the community, that integrate this information into the learning about the environment and, understanding the programs. And in terms of the socioeconomic backgrounds, like programs cannot assume that participants have access to specific resources such as transportation or the internet. Like we go with programs and we expect people, or offer programs to people to come to us and, well, how about transportation? Or what resources do people need to be able to participate? So always keep, be sensitive to that. In some cases, making a resource like transportation available can mean the difference between being culturally competent or not. So all this, being sensitive with and building trust with the community, that's to me the path to a successful outreach strategy with the Latino community and with any minority group, I would say.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Okay, Raymond Coates, you're on.
Okay, good evening, everybody. How are you?
Great, thanks.
First, let me thank you for this opportunity to have this discussion. I think it's an important discussion. Secondly, I want to say that I'm very much impressed by Kit's go get 'em kind of approach. She just really want to make a difference here, and that's impressive. As it relates to diversity and inclusion, I can almost say what she just said, because our communities are mirrored in some ways. But I just believe that when we talk about diversity, diversity begins with our sameness. I spent my professional career working in community social services with a concentration on fatherhood and housing. And one of the things that I learned is that sometimes we ask of people things that they are unable to provide. It is not because they don't want to, but it's because they don't have the resources or wherewithal to participate. So one of the approaches that I think is always helpful when you want to talk to a diverse group, or when I want to talk to a diverse group, is to begin by acknowledging where we are the same. Because it's from our sameness that we even breathe, that we even live, that we even interact. So that has to be for me, the beginning of any conversation about diversity. And when I say sameness, let's just take the issue of Sligo Creek. What does that mean to the people you want to speak to? What does the environment mean to them? Have we asked? Have we heard them? And as it relates to exposing people to the importance of taking care of the environment, have we heard them about what is important to them? And if we've heard what is important to them, have we been able to make an alignment between why we're reaching out to them and what their focus is? So if we believe that diversity starts from working from where we are the same, then we know that people have the same needs, the same desire, the same longing. Most people want to be happy, they want to be healthy, they want to experience high quality well-being in themselves and the people around them. But what are those things in that community what are the things that community believes gets them to that place? So I believe when we reach out to communities, we should try to understand what is this community's concerns, and how do those concerns align with what we're trying to have them do, have them participate in, what we're trying to offer. Once we get there, then inclusion simply comes along with it, because inclusion requires a certain alignment, don't you think? For a healthy relationship, there has to be an alignment. It's very difficult to reach out to people in any depth and lasting way when we broadcast our communication rather than have our communication within the context of the conversation that community is having already. Does that make sense? You go into the communities, you listen to it, you hear it, you go on their sites, you see what they're talking about. You develop the empathy, the understanding, the ability to empathize with their condition. And you begin your outreach, your engagement from a conversational perspective rather than broadcast, rather than the environment is important and we need to do this. You know? How does this connect to the community? How does it connect to the vital things that this community believes increases its own vitality? Now, I had a conversation earlier today about environmental justice. And I think in every community, environmental justice looks different. Some communities, environmental justice is we're all getting together and we're going to be the friends of a park. Other communities, environmental justice might need to look different. You know, I mean, if we talk about environmental justice, we talk about, we're basically talking about an abusive relationship. We talk about our abuse of the environment in which we live in. An abuse that shows not only in how we treat our air, our water, our plants, our wildlife, but also how we treat each other. And yet, since I've been matriculating through this environmental industry, what I've found is that much of the remedy for our engagement in the environment is the same remedies that will support us in our engagement with each other. In green infrastructure, they say that the objective is to observe nature and mimic the processes found in nature and use materials found in nature. To me, that's a clear example of how we should address each other. Every ecosystem is based on those elements of those ecosystems. And every element in that ecosystem impact that ecosystem, good, bad, or in between. How do the people you're reaching out to impact that environment? How does that environment impact them? And how can we reshape that so that it's a mutual beneficial relationship? So that's how I view the opportunity that this environmental push offers to us. It offers to us an opportunity to begin an approach to introducing an industry that most of us may never see mature from an equitable perspective from the very beginning. Resisting introducing this industry like we've introduced all the industries in the past, the same structure, the same context. Change it from, if we move from broadcasting based upon the issue to having conversation based upon the human person we're talking to, the beings we're talking to, then we're able to mimic a natural process, connecting with people. We're able to use that connection to make the alignment between those people and the environment in such a way that it benefits both the environment and the people who live in it. So that's my approach, and so I'll leave it at that, and we can move to the next level. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I wonder, Dennis, you've now heard the other two speakers and thoughts. I wonder what's your, where do you want to take us from here?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say hello to Ruby. Ruby and I have worked together on some occasions, and specifically on outreach around a couple of topics. We were both working on outreach, working through a program that the Department of Energy and Environment had, and the DC Appleseed to discuss the sediment project in the Anacostia River and bring that information to the various communities and the stakeholders along the Anacostia. So just wanted to mention that Ruby and I have had a little opportunity to work together doing outreach into the general community. But one of the things I will point out that Ruby pointed out is a statement she made, meeting people where they are. And I think that's very important. used to do a workshop on what we called Community Outreach and Engagement 101. And we highlighted a few things that were very important to make sure that were done in that process, regardless of what community you were interacting with or engaging with. And also, before I go any further, I would say we have to keep in mind, I know that a lot of the discussion has been around racial diversity, but if we talk about diversity and inclusion, it really goes completely across the board. Talking about including age as a factor, and gender as well. All of these things wind up working into diversifying, whatever organization or process we're working through. So diversity goes, I mean, right now we have a very acute focus, and rightly so, on the racial diversity that's necessary in this country. And that's because of the fact that we have a lot of legacy issues that we have to overcome and deal with as citizens in this country. So a lot of that's coming to light now, but it's very important to keep in mind that a true focus on diversity doesn't just singly focus on the racial diversity. It also includes, all of the other aspects of diversity: gender, sex, religion. I did a program with a group called the Green Muslims, and it's a very wide, diverse group. We now see another emphasis that's taking place is drawing our attention to the Asian community, and so it's important to do the thing that Ruby pointed out, and that is meet people where they are. So one of the other things in that Diversity 101 we used to point out, or is important to point out, is not going in necessarily with an agenda, even if there is something that you really are looking to accomplish by going to work, with a particular group or organization or community. The most important thing for you to do on the front end is to go in and listen.
Yes.
Be able to listen and find out the things that are important to them. And in doing so, you very likely will find those connecting points, and you will have the opportunity, whether it's at that initial opportunity that you're having with, coming in and listening and meeting folks, or if it's later when you come back and find ways of connecting those points. You'll find some connecting points with the agenda that you're coming with. So those are a couple of things that I found to be very important to keep in mind as we look into this issue. And and of course, as I said earlier in our discussion, youth are very, very important to engage in this process in all of the ways that we can, because if you engage the youth, and I say youth as far down the age level as you can go. We started off this evening talking about grandchildren, and that's a very important. Those younger people are very important for us to not leave out of the equation, and we have to reach and engage and involve them, because if you involve them, you will more than likely involve the adults in their lives, the parents and other folks. So find ways of engaging the youth as well. And I just wanted to point out those few things. Also had the benefit of having some discussions with the founder of Ward 8 Woods, and you know, this is an example of a young man who came into a community that was new to him, and you know, just uh, figured out how to engage with the local community, get himself, roll up his sleeves and get involved. And now he has even a diverse working group involved in doing the work that that organization is carrying out over in the east side of the city. So you know, I just wanted to point out those couple of things in reference to the conversations that we've had. And then to stay on point, I did share a couple of documents with Kit. One document that was developed by the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay. When I spoke earlier, I talked about that uh, resolution that we got the board to adopt. And once the board, you know, adopted that resolution, we were able to vote on it and make it a standing committee, so that it's a part of everything that the organization does. And this is it's a very interesting committee because we eliminated the programs committee in doing so, but the diversity, equity, inclusion committee uh, runs its thread through every committee that the organization has, because the real goal is to create a culture of diversity, equity, and inclusion throughout the organization's processes and functions. And so I shared that document because it lays out and gives some suggestions and recommendations. I did some collaborative outreach with Choose Clean Water Coalition. I also attached another document that was developed by the Chesapeake Bay Trust, um, focused on as a guide for the entire watershed, or the organization throughout the watershed, to use as a guide for working to develop, you know, diversity uh, um, within their organizations. And I think these are very important for folks to just, you know, dive into and see what and where these things can be applied to what you're trying to do. But you've started with the most important thing at the very beginning, and that is you've made your intentions, and you have to be intentional about doing the work to make this really happen and work. So I'll leave it at that.
Thanks so much, Dennis. I'll share those documents with the board, and I appreciate them. That's very helpful. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. We're just a time check here. I want to make sure that by 8:30 we're on to the question and answer discussion with the whole group. So we've got about 7-10 minutes. So Ruby and then Raymond, do you have additional thoughts that have sort of come up from as a result of the conversation? Ruby,
Yeah,
sorry, Raymond, go ahead.
yes, I do. I think one of the things that I wanted to piggyback on was something Ruby said about how the how her community what the environment means and how it plays out in her particular community. And I think that was so important. The information that she shared was informative for me because that community is diverse, right? But yet there is a natural inclination towards environmental concerns. I believe that's true in every community. I think it's expressed differently in different communities. For instance, I think in my community, I am the newly hired outreach coordinator for Ward 8 Woods, and I work closely with Nick. And one of the things that I think is germane to how my community can better embrace and address environmental issues in in our communities is through making it an industry. It's a need. I think we treat our environment like it's a hobby, like gardening and like pruning flowers and all that's great. But our environment is cleaning our environment, addressing our environmental concerns. It's as important as picking up the trash, isn't it? At least. At least. And yet we seek volunteers to do the work. And we see volunteers of people who can't afford to volunteer. So when we was talking about cultural competence, that came to mind to me. Like I have to go out and recruit people in hard-hit communities to take what little time they have to give it away, to walk in the woods, to gather trash. I am getting a paycheck for this, for going to get people who are doing worse than me and convincing them to take their time that they might need to be doing whatever they need to get economically stable themselves. I have to ask them and convince them to come here, take time, forget all the things that stress in your life. Come here and help clean up your community. I mean, it's a very extraordinarily conflicting for me. Because I believe that there is a need to clean our community. There is a need to address our environmental concerns. I do believe that that's true in every neighborhood, in every community. But I believe that in my community, and I'm talking about my specific community, the answer to that is to create an industry of the people of this community to address this need. So that's that. I just wanted to kind of bring that out because Rubis' presentation really brought out what the environment might mean to different people in different communities.
Right. Thank you so much, Raymond. Ruby, do you want to sort of put a wrap on this after having listened to Dennis and Raymond?
My God, they are the best. I don't know, I can, go as high as Dennis and Raymond. They are, well experienced leaders in this region, and I have a lot of respect for both of you, and I am honored to be paneling with you guys. So thank you, Kate, for that opportunity. I just a thought that came while we're talking about this and it's more like hands-on thing. It's a very practical thing that I'm gonna bring up here, and is that when it comes to I agree with Raymond about the volunteering aspect, the natural inclination for people to do the work and help, right? But also there is a need to organize, like you want to have an event and you want people to show up, and what do I do? They are not showing up. Do we do the flyer in Spanish in the case of Latinos, or how do we get people to get there? And it's true that our community volunteer like crazy. I've done cleanups with a community in the Langley Park area. We do 2 cleanups a year, and I get up to 80 people. And then it's families, it's the entire family. It's not just, the 2 people. Like there is a difference here with the cultural way of doing things. The typical American going to do the cleanup. I offer to work for 1 hour. I get there at noon and leave at 1. Walk in, give me my gloves, give me my bag, go pick up, come back at 1, I'm out of here. Latino come with the family, Kids come with their toys and their bikes, and mom comes with the stroller, and we spend hours. And while the kids and the families are hanging around, mom and dad are picking up trash, and you hear the clinking of bottles, not just along the sides of the trail, but they walk all the way in there, and you hear the clinking all over the place. It's like so inspiring. So that just to show the spirit of volunteerism and the care, but then there is the other thing, is that how you organize people when you don't have the connection in the community. And I think that there is an economic aspect that has to come to that too. And it's because I think it works when you identify certain leaders of the community and they can help you bring more people. But if you want them to spend the time, inviting friends and, filling out the list of participants, you might want to give them an incentive. I write in my grants, I write volunteer workers and I ask for money for the leaders in my community to get an incentive so they can bring the people that you expect for an event. Last Saturday we had an event with a church in Landover Hills, and I had my three, actually two people, well, the church helped, but I had two leaders of the community helping register people. It was an online, a virtual and in-person event, and I was expecting to get, maybe 30 people, although I would have liked to have, a lot more. What a surprise! I got 40 people in the room and 40 people in Zoom, and that was through the community leaders helping get the word out and organizing. But I gave them an incentive because their time is valuable and they need the money. It doesn't take a lot of money, but I think it's worth it. It's worth it helping, because it's not just, it's just fair, I say, because these people are struggling too in many cases. So you need to help and you need to support, and then a little incentive can inspire people to get, and they will deliver. So that would be like what I'm saying, like more like a real life kind of situation where you may be able to get good results when you do your outreach specifically with your community at Sligo.
Excellent. Okay, so I'm going to try to move this into being not exactly Q&A, but a little more discussion. I see it. Mike, Mark, did you want to, I had asked Mike to look at the chat and see if he could tease out some questions maybe for individuals, or even comments, because I see a number of comments here to which then some of the one or another of the speakers might respond. Mike, what's your take on what's in chat?
Yeah, I'll just summarize some of the comments that I've seen here. There's one noting that committees and task forces should have they should be designed in a way to take into account that people have different capacities to participate, and when they're created. That's one comment. Another comment is that Friends of Sligo Creek, we've focused a lot on the health of the park, but not necessarily focus on broader environmental issues that may affect the community as a whole. So our focus may not always align with community members' interests. We may need to decide if we need to broaden our scope. Then let's see. Then there was a great presentation at an Audubon Naturalist Society Taking Nature Black conference. And that they have good insights there if we're interested. And
Yeah, that was an amazing conference. It was like a 4 or 5 day conference with in such a remarkable array of talent and thoughtfulness. Everybody, I think it's going to be annual, and if you can, you should try to join those, just because they're amazing.
I have a question.
And also they have similarly they have a Latinx conference annually too.
yeah, what's your question, Raymond?
So what is it that the Friends of Sligo Creek want to accomplish and why?
Well, I mean, we have a mission statement of improving the, I can't exactly state from memory, but it's basically to preserve and protect Sligo Creek, then the surrounding park, and then the surrounding watershed. But a lot of the members probably aren't aware that Friends of Sligo Creek was established. It was kind of seeded by the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments as part of a strategy to restore the Anacostia River.
Mm-hmm.
And but I don't think that that's on many members' radar. So yeah, but I don't think it's. Yeah, that's basically.
What I meant was with this inquiry or
Oh, yeah.
this exploration into diversity and inclusion.
Well, I mean, from my perspective, it's we represent, we the organization are active with this little creek and this park and a larger watershed, but we don't represent all the people who are we don't accurately in terms of percentages represent who is in this watershed, and what their environmental concerns are and needs. And so that's and if people who are not represented, they may well have different and equally important ideas about what should be done to preserve the environment in this watershed that we're not hearing from, because we don't know who to ask or how to ask. And so, it's not so much a matter that we should stop picking up litter and stop pulling invasive plants, but what are we missing? And sort of the richness of having those diverse voices, from my experience with being in other such organizations, I learn a lot more from that richness than from hearing from people who kind of have my background. So that's part of what's driven me, is just it's not enough to be
A good steward.
to be able to volunteer. That we have enough money. A lot of us are older. We're not the total population.
Yeah,
Kit, I have a question also, if I could.
please.
So you have a newsletter, and how is the outreach with the newsletter? I mean, is it strictly an electronic newsletter, or
Yeah.
is this in print form? One of the things I will say, and the reason I was asking that is right here in the communities where I've been doing my work over the years, and that's wards 5, 6, 7, and 8 primarily. But as you know, I've wound up all over the watershed at various points. But what I found is also, don't take for granted that everybody is connected by way of the electronic technology. And that's part of what I was even saying, even though I didn't make it as clear about meeting people where they are. You have to find those ways of getting that information into the hands of people who are not, or put it where people will be able to see that information, who are not necessarily going to be connected on the technology. And there's various reasons for that. Some people just choose not to be connected on the technology, but there are those places where that outreach can reach further if it was able to be done outside of just the normal technology route. So that's one thing I wanted to make sure I pointed out.
Well, that's one of the reasons why we have kiosks. And I think, Mike, do we have 12 of them? I think it's at least 12 up and down the creek. And there's every couple of months, there's a display that's like an educational display. It's always got great pictures on it. And we have our English and Spanish brochures. And lately we've been putting a map of fun things to encounter in those kiosks that people can take out, so that there's sort of fun facts. But there may well be additional things that we should be doing. Maybe the newsletter could be put in attached to those kiosks in a way that people could flip through it. Or it could be printed out in some places. I'm sure we will not mail it.
Now, how about the grocery stores and libraries and those kinds of places? Usually they have community bulletin boards or places where folks display things. A lot of times those are places where you can really reach a lot of people who may not even take that walk, down along the stream in the park.
Right.
But all of those ways, and those are just a few, but all of those ways of getting that outreach. And then what is important is once you target those various groups and communities, it's important to invite them in to be a part of the various conversations and things that happen and take place. I mean, I just use myself as an example. Two people found me, and that's why I put in the chat, find that local hero. Two people found me. One was an older gentleman who lived out here in this community and was trying to clean up what is now Marvin Gaye Park. And at the time he was attempting to do that, the park had the title of Needle Park. And that was because it had been the site of like a central drug market for a long time. I won't get into that history, but he would to break up the drug market, he would put on he used to be a scoutmaster, a Boy Scout master, and he would put on his Boy Scout uniform, and he and a colleague of his would go down and sit right in the middle of where the drug market was taking place, and they would play their music. One played a drum, and the other one played some kind of horn, and they would just sit there on a Saturday and start playing music. And of course, the kids would be drawn into the music, and the drug dealers and all those folks would start gravitating further because they didn't want the attention. And he reached out to me one day. I was just out front of my house, cleaning up the trash on a Saturday that the folks walk through and drop on Friday night. And he invited me to come down and give him a hand. He said, "Hey, look, I'm doing this down here, and I heard that you were, like a respected guy in your neighborhood community." And at that time, I had not been involved with cleaning the river, any of those things, but I was beginning to, just engage with the community. I went to help him. He came to help me. Next thing I knew, Bob Boone with the Anacostia Watershed Society, who was trying to find a way of engaging in DC. He was doing great work out in the Prince George's portion and Montgomery portions of the river. but he came and found me and invited me to. He said, "Hey, look, I'll help you do some things along here. I've been looking for you for a long time. Find that local hero and work through them." And to reach into the communities, where they live, and they don't already have to be environmentally centered people. They could be active in whatever it is that in community organizing or community engagement, any way, shape, or form they can. I mean, it could be because they're trying to engage the youth, or they're they need a recreation center, or folks are not getting enough services along certain lines. Any of these kinds of things is all about the same thing. I think we too narrowly put quote unquote environment into too narrow of a box, I would say. Everything is the environment. It's not just the I mean, I know we're focused on cleaning the river, the streams, the parks. I know we're restoring the health of those, but everything is the environment.
Yeah,
We all taking deep breaths. When you take a deep breath, you're involved in the environment.
yeah.
I mean, you breathe in and out, a number of times a minute, and you're involved in the environment when you do that. So, those are some of the ways I think we can, actually engage more people in whatever it is that we're doing.
I see that Ross made a comment regarding, so he says that, so our focus may not always align with community interests. We may have to decide if we need to broaden our scope. The way I see it, it's not broadening the scope. I mean, the function of the organization is clear. It's not it's not changing what you do, is more like how you do it, and the way you do it, the strategies that you develop to do it are going to what you may need to add to your mission, to your goal, is that I was looking at your website here that says that Friends of Sligo Creek is a nonprofit community organization dedicated to protecting, improving, and appreciating the ecological health of Sligo Creek Park and its surrounding watershed. That's the function, and there is no reason why you should change that. Now, what you may want to add is how you're going to do it, by involving people from all backgrounds, by respecting, or by welcoming, or it's more about how you're going to do it, not how, no, I mean, in terms of engaging the people, then the people that live around in the watershed, is how you're going to be inclusive, and what strategies you're going to use. Think about what strategies you're going to use to do that, to bring more diversity and bring more communities into it, and maybe bring more diversity into your board and into your committee. Invite people once you identify them, people that in your community look like the people that live on your watershed.
Thank you. I noticed first a question in the chat, and then also Kathy Michaels has her hand up. So first, let me ask this question. And then we'll go to Kathy's question. Are the incentives primarily monetary when you're talking about incentives, or are there other items of value that might work?
I said you can be as creative as you want about that. It doesn't have to be monetary, but
it should be conducive. It should be conducive to. It should respond to a need specific to the community. The incentive, right, Ruby?
yes.
Thank you.
Well,
Yes.
I would also like to inject what one of the goals, and if you read the mission of the Friends of Sligo Creek, And one of the goals of most of us is to build stewardship. And the stewardship is what will hopefully be the thing that brings people, out on a sustainable kind of basis. Because I shudder to think, just like I think I was talking to someone the other day, and if I walk out of my house and there's trash along the curb or on the sidewalk or grass or wherever, and I step over it and expect someone else to come and pick that trash up, then I'm really not, being a responsible steward of even my own local environment, which surrounds my property. So ultimately, I should try to have enough pride in keeping my own surroundings clean, which will be the driver for me to pick that trash up on my way in or out of the house, or when I do it. We want to build stewardship, and the money part of things can be also built in, but those resources you have to organize and find the ways find various ways to do that. Ruby did point out, that can be done in a number of different ways. I'll give you one example. We're completing a working group that is in its third year right now here in Ward 7. And the goal of this group is to build a resilience hub, a hub of resilience that addresses a number of things. And for the entire 3 years that we've been conducting this, we were able to fund stipends for the participants. We've had up to 15 people participate in each one of the working groups over the 3-year period. Three different groups of 15 people, and some returnees, but we paid a stipend for every meeting that they attended, and also we fed them dinner because they were coming in the evening after work or what have you. So there was dinner available for them when they came to these meetings. And we were able to provide childcare for those who needed that as a service too. So how we did that? Well, one of the things that I had worked very hard on when I was running the organization groundwork was something that most of the grants that we were receiving were very prohibitive in being able to really allow us to be as effective as we could be. And I pointed out to the grant makers a couple of things that would be helpful in helping us to be able to do our work better. And they heard me and they listened and they did it. And the people were surprised when they said, "Oh, we never knew you could buy food with the grant funds, or that you could, pay stipends or these kinds of things." You can change things by changing the policies and the language within those things to make them work. Those are some ways that things can just be changed from the status quo. So, but we can build an industry. We can also build an organization, and it doesn't always have to be monetized, hopefully, in order for us to have stewardship work in our communities.
So Sligo, how many communities and community organizations and efforts is Sligo a part of outside of the park and the environment? I mean, does the organization give voice to the other concerns in that community?
We've
I mean, like, let's say in the Latino community, there is a issue around child care for single working mothers, right? In that community up near Silver Spring, that Latino community, there's an advocacy going on around this issue. Those kinds of issues that are not necessarily related to directly to the environment, but related to the people who live in that environment. Are you connected to those kinds of things in the various communities you want to reach out to?
I'm sure lots of us individually are, through different organizations, because a lot of us are active in different organizations.
Mhm.
And we can use that. We can use those connections to think about how to do what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Hi, Kathy. What is your question?
Make it quick too, please.
Oh, I just wanted to emphasize the point about the ways we're used to communicating aren't necessarily always the best ways to communicate with any given community. And I just put an example in the chat that was quite striking when we were working with Eastern Middle School, actually, where my son was going, and we did a lot of environmental and gardening projects there. And when we did outreach using listservs and newsletters, and we got one smaller group of people, families, and usually the whole families. When the principal actually did robocalls, we would get flooded with kids. And often they would get dropped off, but it was great, and they were all enthusiastic. But it was just really interesting, the differences in the ways that outreach can work in different communities. And I'm not exactly sure how to figure that out from the start. So anyway, that's just what I want to throw out there. It's like, how do you determine what the best outreach?
Thank you. I noticed Raymond had made a comment in the chat about expanding the flyer outreach use by using different community members, and that can be a tool to build community connections. And that's
Yeah. So when you expand your flyer outreach, your informational outreach to those communities, you hire from that community. And allow that person that's in that community, from that community, to put the flyers in the grocery store. Because somebody that knows him might ask him, "What are you doing?" And then he can explain it. And they're more likely to ask that of him than if they saw you or me putting it in there.
Mm.
Plus, there's an opportunity to actually, people are more, I understand that the monetary value connection ought not be the only connection, but I do believe that servicing our environment is an industry. It needs to be treated that way. It's not a pet to be patted. It's a necessity. I mean, I don't want to sound over dramatic, but people are dying here, literally dying. I mean, I just don't see how we could see the need for oil, gas. We see the need for hard surfaces. We saw all the need for that because there was a need for our society and our community to live a certain way, to reach a certain quality of life. We could see that. And so we built industries to address that. And we mainly, a lot of times we built those industries out of that need. We have the opportunity to do that right here, right now. And we have the opportunity to do it in a way that restricts, that extrudes the way old industries were brought in. We can build these industries locally, not only train the people to do the jobs, but train the entrepreneurs from that community to hire the people that we train to do the job.
You know, Raymond, one thing I wanted to sort of circle back to, and it's certainly related to you and the work that you do. When we had talked a little bit in Friends of Sligo Creek about joining Ward 8 Woods sometime to do some volunteering with you all. And I think one of the ways that some of our folks might get a better sense, a little bit, hopefully not the death and dying, but nonetheless, some of the particular problems you're talking about, we might get a better sense of that and create some camaraderie as well, as if we do, you know, what we talked about when we're able to do it in terms of COVID. But I think that would be, I think we should circle back to that and think about doing that again, because I think that would be, it'd be fun and also interesting. And I also sorry, I also saw that Dennis said we should have fun activities, and invite everybody. And that's another thing. I don't remember, it was Ruby or somebody I talked to. It might have been Denise Guitarra from ANS, but you know, the idea of having, especially, no, I think it was Delia Aguilar, who's on our board, said we should have some fun activities and get people together, because that's, especially as Ruby knows, that, you know, you get the families together that way, and if the kids come, the grown-ups come, and it's just, it's a way of celebrating the park, and not just, you know, the litter or the invasive plants, but doing the appreciation part. And I know Ruby needs to go at 9, and I said that we would wrap at 9. But I wonder if, is there anyone else who wanted to say anything final?
Yeah, I wanted to mention that I'd like to thank our speakers, Raymond, Ruby, Dennis, and I'll be in contact to try to get a Friends of Sligo Creek mug to our speakers. Thank you.
Thank you.
What's your
I look
incentive?
forward to the mug.
Okay.
No, absolutely. Great. I really appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you guys, and thank you guys for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you for coming out. This has been a very good meeting.
Thank you.
I know we've tried in the past to get the increase the diversity of our group. On Sweep the Creek, we get it, but other events we don't. So this gave us some ideas on how to do it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good. And just keep on doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I believe you'll, especially, I think you're gonna succeed, because the times right now are driving people toward one another rather than away from one another.
Absolutely.
So, you know, just keep doing what you're doing. You have the right format.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank you all.
night.
Thank you for inviting us.
Good night.
Have a good evening.
Yeah. Bye.